My girlfriend demanded I sleep on the couch, so her male friend could have the bed. I said, no problem. Then I grabbed my keys and never came back. She's still texting from that same couch. All right, Reddit, grab some coffee because this one's a doozy. My girlfriend of 2 years asked me to sleep on the couch so her male friend could take my spot in the bed, in my apartment. That I pay for. Let me tell you how that conversation ended. I'm 31, work as an HVAC technician in Arizona, and I've been living in the same apartment in Phoenix for about 4 years now. Nothing fancy, just a two-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood with good AC and a parking spot for my truck. The complex has a pool I never use and a laundry room that's always busy on weekends, but otherwise it's quiet. Just working professionals and a few retirees who water their plants at dawn. The apartment itself took me forever to furnish properly. When I first moved in, I had a mattress on the floor and a folding chair. 4 years later, I'd turned it into an actual home. Real furniture, not the hand-me-down stuff from college. A couch I'd saved up for. A bed frame with a headboard like an adult. Kitchen appliances that actually worked. It was simple, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. The second bedroom I converted into a home gym/storage space because I'm single. And what else was I going to do with it? Had a bench in there, some free weights, a pull-up bar mounted in the doorframe. Nothing fancy but enough to stay in shape without paying for a gym membership. My truck was my other pride and joy. A 2015 Ford F-150 that I'd bought used, but treated like new. Changed the oil religiously. Kept it clean inside and out. Handled the minor repairs myself because working with my hands is what I do. Some guys have hobbies like golf or video games. I've got my truck and the occasional project car I pick up cheap from auctions. Well, I was single. Then I met Brittany. We connected at a mutual friend's birthday party about 2 years ago. She was 28, worked as an administrative assistant at a real estate office, and had this smile that could light up a room. We hit it off immediately, exchanged numbers, and before I knew it, we were dating exclusively. She was different from the women I dated before, more put together. Had her own apartment, her own car, a job that paid actual bills. Seemed like she had her head on straight. Our first few dates were simple. Dinner, movies, a hike once, when the weather wasn't trying to kill us. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my work like she actually cared, and never complained about where I took her or what I drove. By the third month, we were basically inseparable. She'd come over after work, and we'd cook dinner together. She'd fall asleep on my couch while I watched sports, and somehow that felt like the best thing in the world. I started thinking about the future for the first time in years. Marriage, maybe kids eventually, a house with a garage where I could work on cars while she did whatever made her happy. Brittany moved into my place about 8 months into the relationship. Looking back, that was probably too fast. But when you're in love, you don't think about stuff like that. You just think about how nice it is to wake up next to someone, to have dinner together, to build something with another person. The move-in went smooth enough. She didn't have much stuff, just clothes and some kitchen gadgets and a collection of books she never actually read. We merged our lives piece by piece. Her bathroom stuff mixed with mine. Her shows in my TV queue. Her name on the mailbox next to mine. Looking back, there were probably warning signs even then. Little things I brushed off because everything else seemed so good. She'd get annoyed when I worked late, even though she knew the job was like that. She'd compare our apartment to her friends' places, always finding something lacking. She'd scroll through social media and sigh at pictures of vacations we couldn't afford. But I told myself that was just normal relationship stuff. Nobody's perfect, right? My job keeps me busy. HVAC work in Arizona is basically year-round employment because the heat never stops trying to kill people's air conditioning units. Summers are brutal, 14-hour days sometimes, crawling around in attics that feel like the surface of the sun. Your clothes are soaked through by 10 a.m. Your tools get so hot they'll burn your hands if you're not careful. You're sweating so much you have to remember to hydrate constantly, or you'll end up in the ER. But the pay is solid, and I've built up a good reputation with a company that treats its people right. My boss Frank is this old-timer who started the business 40 years ago and runs it like family. Guys who work hard get rewarded. Guys who slack off get pushed out. It's simple and fair, and I've always appreciated that about him. The crew I work with are good people too. Dave and Ramon have been there since before I started. We've got this rhythm now, working jobs together without needing to say much. They know when to pass me tools. I know when to cover their breaks. We grab lunch at the same taco truck, complain about the same customers, share the same sense of humor that only develops after years of shared suffering. The point is, I work hard. I provide. The apartment was mine before Brittany, and even after she moved in, I never asked her to split rent equally. She paid a third. I covered the rest plus utilities. Seemed fair since I made more money, and it was my place first. Everything was good. At least, I thought it was. The problems started creeping in about 6 months ago, though I didn't recognize them for what they were at the time. Brittany had this friend from college named Austin. They'd been buddies since freshman year, she said. Just friends, nothing romantic. They tried dating once and realized they were better as pals. Classic story, right? I had no reason not to believe her. She'd mentioned him occasionally over the course of our relationship. Austin said this, Austin did that. He came up in stories about her college days, always as a side character. Some dude who was part of their friend group, but nothing special. Austin moved back to Phoenix from somewhere up north. He'd been gone for years, doing whatever he was doing, and suddenly he's back in town and reconnecting with old friends. Brittany was excited about it. Said it would be great to have her old crew back together. I'm not the jealous type. Never have been. My philosophy has always been that if someone wants to cheat, they're going to cheat whether you're paranoid about it or not. Trust them until they give you a reason not to. So when Brittany started hanging out with Austin more, I didn't make a big deal about it. They'd grab coffee, go to lunch. She'd text him throughout the day and laugh at whatever he was saying. Normal friend stuff, I figured. Everyone has friends outside their relationship, and expecting your partner to cut off all ties with the opposite gender is toxic nonsense. At least that's what I told myself. But then the dynamic started shifting. First, it was little comments. Austin thinks I should try that new restaurant downtown. Austin says I need to be more adventurous. Austin thinks Phoenix is too boring and we should travel more. Cool, I thought. Austin sure has a lot of opinions about my girlfriend's life. Then Brittany started comparing us. Not outright, not maliciously, but in these subtle ways that stung more than she probably realized. I'd come home exhausted from a 10-hour day fixing commercial AC units, and she'd be on the phone with Austin, laughing about some inside joke. When she hung up, she'd look at me and say something like, Austin's been to 12 countries. Can you believe that? 12. We've never even been outside Arizona together. I'd point out that I can't exactly take 2 weeks off during summer when everyone's AC is dying, but that explanation never seemed to satisfy her. She'd just sigh and scroll through Austin's Instagram, showing me pictures of him in various exotic locations. Thailand, Portugal, Iceland. Like I was supposed to feel bad for not having a life of permanent vacation. The criticism got sharper. My hobbies were boring. My truck was too old. I didn't take her anywhere exciting. I was always tired. I never wanted to do anything spontaneous. Every observation about my life came with an unspoken comparison to this dude who apparently lived like every day was a Red Bull commercial. Meanwhile, Austin was this fountain of adventure and excitement. Austin went skydiving last month. Austin's thinking about moving to Costa Rica. Austin doesn't believe in settling down. Austin lives for the moment. I started to dread hearing that name. It would pop up in every conversation, every dinner, every quiet moment. Austin, Austin, Austin. Like he was some kind of religious figure I was supposed to worship. About 2 months before the couch incident, Brittany dropped a bomb on me. Austin's lease was ending, and he was between places. Could he stay with us for a few weeks while he figured out his next move? Every instinct in my body screamed no. But what was I supposed to say? If I refused, I'd look like an insecure boyfriend who couldn't handle his girlfriend having male friends. If I said yes, I'd be letting this dude into my home. It felt like a trap either way. I made a decision I'd come to regret. I said yes, but with conditions. He could stay in the spare room, the one I'd converted into a gym. I'd clear out some of my equipment temporarily, 2 weeks max, and he'd need to contribute something toward groceries and utilities. Brittany was thrilled, hugged me, called me the best boyfriend ever, said she knew I was a good guy. For a moment, I felt like maybe I was just being paranoid about this whole Austin thing. Maybe he really was just an old friend who needed a hand. Maybe I'd been reading too much into the situation. That feeling lasted about 3 days. Austin showed up with 2 duffel bags and a laptop case. First impression? The guy was exactly what I expected. Tall, fit in that effortless way that suggested he'd never done manual labor in his life, with this surfer bro vibe that was painfully out of place in landlocked Arizona. He had a tan that looked maintained rather than earned, and clothes that walked the line between casual and carefully curated. The kind of guy who probably spent more time on his appearance than he'd ever admit. He had opinions about everything, and a casual way of inserting himself into every conversation. Within an hour of arriving, he'd commented on my furniture, my entertainment system, my choice of grocery store, and my workout equipment, all under the guise of making conversation. But each comment had this subtle condescension that made my jaw clench. The first night, Brittany made dinner, and the 3 of us ate together. Austin dominated the conversation, telling stories about his travels, his adventures, his entrepreneurial ventures. That sounded like a lot of failed get-rich-quick schemes to me. Some app that never launched, some importing business that went nowhere, some consulting gig that he described in the vaguest possible terms. Brittany hung on every word like he was recounting war stories. When I brought up my work, Austin gave me this patronizing smile and said, "That's cool, man. Someone's got to keep the AC running. Someone's got to keep the AC running." Like I was some background character in my own apartment. Like my job, the thing that paid for the roof over his freeloading head, was somehow less valuable than his endless stream of failed ventures and travel Instagram posts. I didn't respond, just kept eating. But something shifted in me that night. A tiny crack in the trust I'd been trying so hard to maintain. The 2 weeks came and went. Austin was still there. Brittany said he just needed a little more time. His new place fell through, but he had another lead. 1 more week, tops. She'd handle it. I just needed to be patient. 1 week became 2. 2 became 4. Meanwhile, I watched my relationship deteriorate in real time. Brittany and Austin would stay up late watching movies while I went to bed, because I had work at 6 a.m. They'd be laughing at something on the TV, or talking in hushed tones that would go quiet whenever I walked through. I'd come home to find them cooking together. This whole domestic scene that I was clearly the third wheel in. She started talking to me less and less. Always distracted. Always on her phone texting him even when he was in the next room. The apartment that used to feel like mine now felt occupied. Austin's stuff spreading into every room. His toiletries crowding my bathroom counter. His food taking up space in my fridge. His presence filling every corner until there was barely room for me. I confronted her about it once. Asked if something was going on between them. She got defensive immediately. Called me paranoid. Said I was trying to isolate her from her friends. Accused me of being controlling and insecure. All the buzzwords designed to make me feel like the bad guy. She actually turned it around on me, saying my accusations were proof of my own insecurities rather than proof of anything she'd done. I backed off because maybe I was overreacting. Maybe living with someone new was just an adjustment period. Maybe I needed to give it time. Stupid, I know. But when you love someone, you make excuses for things you shouldn't excuse. You tell yourself the red flags are just quirks. The warning signs are just miscommunications. The gut feelings are just insecurity. It was a Thursday night. I remember because Thursdays were my early days, done by 4 p.m., which meant I could actually be home at a reasonable hour. I walked into my apartment to find Brittany and Austin on the couch, watching some travel documentary about Southeast Asia. Nothing suspicious on the surface, but there was this energy between them that made my skin crawl. They were sitting too close. She was leaning into him. They both looked up at me like I'd interrupted something. I dropped my work bag and headed to the kitchen for something to eat. Brittany followed me. I could tell by her expression that a conversation was coming. The kind of conversation that starts with a heavy sigh and a, "So, we need to talk." She hit me with it. Austin had been having trouble sleeping in the spare room. The pull-out couch wasn't comfortable enough, and his back was really bothering him. He had some kind of condition, she said, though she'd never mentioned that before. The mattress in our bedroom was much better for his back. I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. She wanted me to sleep on the couch for a few nights so Austin could have the bed. Our bed, in my apartment, where I paid the majority of the rent. I asked her to repeat it because surely I'd misheard. Nope. Same request. Just for a few nights, until Austin found his new place. It would really help his back, and I was so strong and flexible from work that the couch wouldn't bother me at all. I set down my fork, looked her dead in the eyes, asked if she was serious right now. She started getting defensive again, said I was being dramatic, said it was just a bed, and why was I so attached to material things? Said Austin was a guest and guests should be comfortable, said a real man wouldn't feel threatened by helping out a friend. A real man. That's what she said to me, in my home, asking me to give up my bed to another dude so she could, what, play hostess? I took a deep breath, told myself to stay calm. Then I asked the obvious question. If Austin needs the bed, why can't Brittany sleep on the couch? She looked at me like I'd suggested something insane. Because that's where Austin has been sleeping, she said. It wouldn't be fair to make him move back to the couch when we have a perfectly good bed. The logic was so twisted I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just nodded. Said, okay, no problem. She brightened up immediately, thanked me, said she knew I'd understand, started talking about how it was just temporary and everything would be normal soon. I let her talk, didn't argue, didn't fight, just listened. Then I walked to the bedroom, grabbed my keys off the nightstand, my wallet from the dresser, and my jacket from the closet. Brittany followed me, suddenly confused. I told her she was right. The couch wasn't fair to Austin. Neither was the spare room. So I was solving the problem. She could have the whole bedroom. She could give Austin whatever he needed. I was leaving. The color drained from her face. She tried to backtrack. Said she didn't mean it like that. Said we could talk about this. Said I was overreacting. I was already at the door. She asked where I was going. I told her I didn't know yet, but anywhere was better than a place where I'm treated like a guest in my own home. Last thing I heard before the door closed was her calling my name. I kept walking. I drove around for about an hour, trying to process what just happened. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not from anger, but from adrenaline. I'd just walked out on a 2-year relationship over a couch request. But it wasn't really about the couch, was it? It was about everything the couch represented. The streets of Phoenix blurred past as I drove. Familiar landmarks looking different somehow. The gas station where Brittany and I used to stop for road trip snacks. The restaurant where we'd had our 6-month anniversary dinner. Every corner of this city held some memory of us. And now all of it felt contaminated. I pulled into a parking lot somewhere and just sat there. Engine running. AC blasting because even at night Arizona doesn't cool down much. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't look at it. Didn't want to see whatever excuses or accusations were coming through. The weird thing was, I didn't feel as devastated as I thought I would. Walking out of that apartment, I expected to feel broken, lost, like my whole world was collapsing. But instead, there was this strange clarity, like I'd been living in fog for months and suddenly the air cleared. My buddy James lived about 20 minutes across town. We'd been friends since high school, the kind of friend you can call at any hour without explanation. We'd survived football practice together, graduated together, been each other's wingmen through countless failed dating attempts. He was there when my dad got sick a few years back. I was there when his engagement fell apart. I texted him, asked if his spare room was available for a few nights. He responded in seconds, said the door was open and there was cold stuff in the fridge if I needed it. No questions, no hesitation, just immediate support. That's the kind of friend James is. I showed up at his place around 9 p.m. James took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. Just handed me a Gatorade and turned on the game. We sat in silence for a while, which is exactly what I needed. No pressure to talk, no prodding for details. Just two guys watching baseball like nothing was wrong. Eventually, I told him everything. The Austin situation, the gradual disrespect, the couch request, my exit. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I respect most about James. Most people want to jump in with advice or commentary. He just listens until you're done. When I finished, he just nodded and said, "So when are you getting your stuff?" That's when it hit me. All my belongings were still in that apartment. My clothes, my furniture, my tools, everything I'd accumulated over 4 years. Brittany had my whole life hostage. My bed, my couch, my kitchen table, everything I'd worked for, was sitting in an apartment with a woman who just asked me to sleep on the floor. I told him I'd figure it out tomorrow. For now, I just needed to sleep. My phone started blowing up around midnight. Brittany first, then Austin, then Brittany again. The notifications kept rolling in, one after another, lighting up my screen like some kind of desperate fireworks display. The texts from her were a masterclass in manipulation. First came confusion. Where did you go? Why aren't you answering? This is so immature. Then came bargaining. Okay, we can talk about the sleeping arrangements. I didn't realize you felt so strongly. Just come home. We can work this out. Then came guilt tripping. I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're abandoning me. What am I supposed to tell Austin? He's going to think this is his fault. Then came anger. Fine. If you want to be a child about this, go ahead. I don't need someone who can't handle a simple request. Plenty of guys would be happy to have me. Austin chimed in too, which I thought was bold considering he was the catalyst for all this. He sent one message saying he didn't mean to cause problems between us, and maybe I was taking things too personally. Real diplomatic for a guy who'd been camping out in my apartment for weeks while probably sleeping with my girlfriend. I muted both of them and went to sleep. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The next morning, I called into work and explained the situation to Frank. He'd been through a divorce himself years ago, so he understood immediately. Told me to take the day and handle my business. Said the crew could cover my jobs, and to take care of what needed taking care of. That's the kind of boss Frank is. When his guys need something, he delivers. No questions about when I'd be back, no guilt trip about leaving them short-handed. Just genuine support and the time I needed. James had a pickup truck, and he offered to help me move my stuff. We grabbed breakfast at this diner near his place, went over the game plan, and headed to the apartment mid-morning, When I knew Brittany would be at work, I still had my key, and everything in there was mine anyway. Legally and morally, I had every right to take what I'd paid for. The drive over felt surreal. Same streets I'd driven 1,000 times, but now they felt like enemy territory. I kept expecting to see Brittany's car, kept tensing up at every corner, but we made it to the complex without incident. Walking up the stairs to my old front door felt strange. 3 days ago, this was home. Now it was just a place I used to live. What I found when I walked in made my blood boil. The spare room, which was supposed to be temporary housing for Austin, had been completely rearranged. His stuff was everywhere. Clothes in my closet, toiletries in my bathroom, his laptop on my desk. The guy had fully moved in. My gym equipment had been shoved into a corner, covered with a blanket like it was embarrassing. His posters were on the wall. His shoes were lined up by the door. It looked like he'd lived there for months, not weeks. But that wasn't the worst part. When I walked into the bedroom, I saw it. 2 pillows on my side of the bed, 2 water glasses on the nightstand, a pair of Austin's shoes by the door. They'd been sleeping together, in my bed, while I was paying rent, while I was working 14-hour days in 100-degree heat so she could have a nice apartment to live in, while I was making excuses for her behavior and giving her the benefit of the doubt. The evidence was everywhere once I started looking. His charger plugged in by my side of the bed, his clothes mixed with hers in the laundry basket. Little signs of domestic intimacy that told the whole story without needing words. The couch request wasn't about his back. It was about them wanting me out of the picture so they could stop sneaking around. They probably thought I was too stupid to figure it out, too trusting, too nice. I stood there for a moment, just taking it in. James came up behind me, saw what I was seeing, and let out a low whistle. For about 30 seconds, I considered doing something stupid, breaking things, confronting them, making a scene. My hands were balled into fists, and there was this heat rising in my chest that felt dangerous. But then, this strange calm settled over me. What would that accomplish? It wouldn't change what they did. It wouldn't get my time back. It would just make me look unstable and give Brittany ammunition to play the victim. She'd tell everyone I trashed the apartment, went crazy, proved that I was the bad guy all along. Nah, not giving her that satisfaction. So instead, I got to work. James and I spent 4 hours systematically removing every single thing that belonged to me from that apartment. The TV I'd bought, the couch, ironically, the kitchen appliances, my bedroom furniture, all my clothes, my tools, my gym equipment, everything that was mine. We worked efficiently, like a military operation, room by room, piece by piece, load after load to the truck, then to the storage unit I'd rented that morning. By mid-afternoon, the apartment was stripped of everything I'd contributed over 4 years. When we were done, the place looked hollow. Brittany would come home to bare walls, an empty living room, and no bed to sleep in. Hope Austin's back enjoys the floor. Hope his 12 countries prepared him for roughing it. I left my key on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "Good luck with the rent. It's due on the 1st. Brief, professional, cold, exactly what she deserved." Brittany came home that evening to discover what I'd done. The calls and texts ramped up to nuclear levels. She was crying on my voicemail. "How could you do this? You took everything. I can't even sleep tonight because there's no bed. This is cruel, even for you. Even for me. Like I was the villain in this story." Austin called too. Now his tone was different. Less condescending, more panicked. He was saying something about how he and Brittany were just friends, and I was misreading the situation. Said the bedroom thing was innocent, he just needed better back support. I'm sure the 2 water glasses on the nightstand were for back support too. James was monitoring my phone while I packed everything into a storage unit. He'd read the messages out loud, and we'd both shake our heads at how pathetic they sounded. By day 3, Brittany's tone shifted again. Now she was trying a different approach. She admitted that maybe she'd gotten too close to Austin. Said it was emotional but never physical. Said she'd been feeling neglected because I worked so much, and Austin was just there, and one thing led to another. Classic blame shifting. I worked too much to provide for the apartment she lived in, so naturally she had to find emotional support in another man's arms. Made perfect sense. I still didn't respond to any of it. A week later, I got a text from her mom. Mrs. Patterson had always liked me, said I was a good influence on her daughter. Her message was apologetic, saying she'd heard what happened and couldn't believe Brittany would do something like that. Said she'd raised her better. I appreciated the sentiment but kept my response short. Thanked her for reaching out. Said I wished her family the best. That was more than Brittany deserved. I found a new apartment within 2 weeks. Same general area, different complex. Smaller than my old place, but cleaner, newer, and most importantly, mine alone. James helped me move everything from storage on a Saturday. We grabbed breakfast burritos, rented a dolly, and knocked it out in 6 hours. By nightfall, my new place looked like home. Gym equipment set up in the spare room, couch facing the TV at the perfect angle. My tools organized in the closet exactly how I like them. Frank called me Monday morning with good news. One of the senior guys was retiring, and he wanted me to take over his route. Bigger territory, better clients, significant pay bump. I said yes before he finished explaining the details. The next few weeks flew by. New apartment, new responsibilities at work, new routine that was entirely mine. I started hitting the gym again, meal prepping on Sundays, picking up extra shifts when they were available. About a month after I moved out, I ran into Brittany's coworker at the grocery store. Woman named Linda, who I'd met at a few office parties. She spotted me in the produce section and made a beeline over. She told me everything. Turns out Austin wasn't too keen on paying rent. When the first of the month came around after I left, Brittany asked him to cover half. He laughed and said he didn't have it. Said he was between opportunities. Said she should ask her parents for help. The landlord sent a warning notice after 2 weeks. Then a final notice. Then eviction proceedings started. Brittany had to break her lease early. Cost her $2,400 in penalties, plus the deposit she'd never see again. She moved back in with her parents in Scottsdale, cramming her stuff into her childhood bedroom at 28 years old. Austin, he bounced within 3 days of the eviction notice. Packed his 2 duffel bags and his laptop, said he had a friend in Tucson who could put him up. Didn't even help her move. Didn't offer gas money. Just disappeared. Linda said Brittany showed up to work crying for a week straight. Had to take personal days because she couldn't function. The whole office knew what happened. But here's the best part. Apparently Austin had borrowed $600 from Brittany to fix his car before he left. Promised to pay her back as soon as he got settled. That was 5 weeks ago. He'd blocked her number. The great adventurer who'd traveled to 12 countries couldn't scrape together $600 to pay back the woman he'd supposedly fallen for. Linda asked if I wanted Brittany's new number, in case I wanted to reach out. I told her I was good. Grabbed my groceries and left. 3 months after everything went down, I was grabbing tacos with James at this spot near downtown. We'd just finished a Saturday morning working on my motorcycle in his garage. Grease under our fingernails, cold drinks in hand, talking about nothing important. Then Brittany walked in. She was with her mom, probably doing some mother-daughter lunch thing. The second she spotted me, she froze mid-step like she'd seen a ghost. Her mom noticed, followed her gaze, and her face fell. James saw the whole thing. He leaned over and asked if I wanted to leave. I told him nah. We were here first. Brittany made her way over. Her mom hung back, looking uncomfortable. She looked different, thinner, tired. The confidence she used to carry herself with was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like regret. She started talking fast, said she'd been wanting to reach out, said she owed me an apology, said Austin turned out to be everything I probably thought he was. Unreliable, selfish, a user who bounced the second things got hard. I just let her talk. Didn't interrupt. She said moving back with her parents was humiliating. Said she'd lost most of her friends because they all sided with me. Said her dad barely spoke to her for a month because he'd liked me so much. Said she'd been thinking about what she threw away every single day. Then she asked if we could grab coffee sometime. Just to talk. Just to get some closure. I told her I didn't need closure. I was doing fine. Her eyes welled up. She asked if there was any chance we could try again. Said she'd learned her lesson. Said she'd never take me for granted again. I looked at her for a long moment. 2 years we'd been together. Hundreds of dinners. Thousands of conversations. Plans for a future that she threw away for some drifter with good stories. I told her no. Told her I wished her well, but we were done. Then I turned back to my tacos. She stood there for another few seconds, probably waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she walked back to her mom. They left without ordering. James waited until they were gone, then raised his drink. Said he was proud of me. I didn't feel proud. Didn't feel vindicated. Didn't feel much of anything, honestly. Just ready to move on. 6 months after the breakup, Frank made good on his promise. He called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon, handed me a folder, and told me he wanted me to become a partner in the business. He was 63. His knees were shot from decades of crawling through attics. He wanted to start stepping back, maybe retire in 5 years. And he wanted someone he trusted to take over. The deal was good. I'd buy in over time, take on more responsibility gradually, and eventually own 40% of the company. He'd stay on as a consultant until he was ready to fully retire. I signed the papers that Friday. The guys on the crew threw me a little celebration at the shop. Dave brought a cake his wife made. Ramon gave a toast that was mostly insults, but ended with him saying I deserved it. Frank just sat in the corner smiling like a proud dad. That same week, I put an offer on a house. Nothing crazy. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garage big enough for my truck, and a project car. Needed some work, but that's what I do. The seller accepted, and I started the mortgage process. James helped me move in on a Saturday in October. By then, I'd accumulated enough stuff that it took 2 trips with both our trucks. We finished around sunset, cracked open some sodas on the back patio, and watched the sky turn orange over the mountains. He asked if I ever thought about Brittany anymore. I told him honestly. Sometimes. Not with anger or regret. Just wondering how things could have gone so differently. How someone I thought I knew could turn out to be someone else entirely. He nodded and said, "That's life. People surprise you. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. You just gotta keep moving." The next morning, I woke up in my own house. My name on the deed. My truck in the garage. My future spread out in front of me with no one else's fingerprints on it. First thing I did was make coffee in my new kitchen. Second thing I did was start a list of all the projects I wanted to tackle. New deck in the backyard. Convert the 3rd bedroom into a proper home gym. Maybe build some shelving in the garage. Enough to keep me busy for years. 8 months after I walked out of that apartment, I was at a hardware store picking up supplies for the deck project when my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Turned out to be Brittany's dad. He apologized for reaching out randomly. Said he'd gotten my number from his wife. Said he just wanted me to know that he was sorry for how things turned out. That he'd always thought of me like the son he never had. That watching Brittany throw away our relationship for some wandering fool was one of the most frustrating things he'd ever witnessed as a father. He said Brittany was doing better now. Got a new job. Started seeing someone from her office. He hoped it worked out for her, but he also hoped I'd found someone who appreciated me. I thanked him for the message. Told him I was doing well. Told him I'd always appreciated the time we spent together working on stuff in his garage. Meant it too. The man taught me more about engines in a few months than I'd learned my whole life before that. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. Simple closure from someone who actually deserved it. 2 weeks later, I met someone. Her name was Jessica. Nurse at the hospital downtown, worked the overnight shift, which meant her schedule was as brutal as mine. We met at the diner where I'd started eating breakfast on Saturday mornings. She was sitting at the counter, scrubs still on, dead tired, but still smiling at the waitress. We got to talking because the only open seat was next to her. Found out we both worked jobs that most people didn't understand. Both valued stability over excitement. Both preferred quiet nights at home over bars and clubs. I asked for her number before I left. She gave it to me without hesitation. Our first date was a week later. Nothing fancy, just dinner at an Italian place near my new house. She asked questions about HVAC work and actually listened to the answers. Didn't check her phone once. Laughed at my jokes even when they weren't that funny. At the end of the night, she said she'd had a great time and wanted to do it again. I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement exactly, more like possibility. Like maybe the next chapter of my life was starting, and it might actually be better than the last one. Final update. It's been a year now since the couch incident. Figured I'd wrap this up for anyone who stuck around. Brittany texted me on the anniversary. Said she was sorry. Said she still thought about what she did. Said she hoped I was happy. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. Just didn't have anything to say. Austin apparently made it to Costa Rica after all. Saw it on social media through a friend of a friend. He's teaching surfing lessons or something. Living that spontaneous life he always talked about? Good for him. Far away from anyone I care about. Jessica and I are still together. 6 months now. She practically lives at my place most weeks. Her toothbrush is in my bathroom. Her coffee mug is in my cabinet. But this time it feels different. This time I'm not carrying the whole relationship on my back while she daydreams about someone else. Frank officially announced his retirement last month. The transition is happening this spring. By summer, I'll be running the company with 2 other guys who bought in as junior partners. 32 years old with my name on a business, a house with equity, and a woman who actually wants to be with me. Not bad for a guy who got asked to sleep on his own couch. Brittany's still out there somewhere, probably lying awake some nights wondering how things could have been different. Maybe she learned something. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I built a life without her, a better one. And every morning I wake up in my own bed, in my own house, next to someone who respects me. That couch she wanted me to sleep on, sitting in my living room right now. Jessica's curled up on it watching TV while I type this. Funny how things work out. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My girlfriend told me I was insecure for not wanting her to sleep in the same bed as her male best friend. I said, "You're right," broke up with her, and started dating the best friend's ex. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. My ex-girlfriend genuinely thought I was the problem for not wanting her to share a bed with another dude, called me insecure, controlling, and jealous. So I agreed with her, packed my stuff, and somehow ended up dating the one person who could expose exactly how full of garbage she was. Life's funny that way. I'm Cole, 29, and I work as a civil engineer for a firm in North Carolina. Been here since college because I actually like humid summers and sweet tea, and also because my job pays well and I've got a nice little townhouse that's almost paid off. Nothing flashy, but it's mine. Got a truck that runs, a dog named Bruno, who thinks he's a lapdog despite being 80 pounds. And until about 8 months ago, I had a girlfriend named Megan, who I thought was the love of my life. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. My job's pretty straightforward. I design drainage systems, review construction plans, and make sure buildings don't collapse because someone wanted to save money on foundation work. Not glamorous, but it pays well, and I'm good at it. My boss keeps hinting about a promotion to senior engineer, which would mean more money and less time in the field dealing with contractors who think they know more than the guy with the actual degree. The townhouse was a steal. Previous owner had to relocate fast for work and practically gave it away. 2 bedrooms, small backyard perfect for Bruno, garage where I keep my workout equipment and tools. I've been slowly upgrading things over the years. New kitchen counters, hardwood floors in the living room, built-in shelves in the office. The kind of stuff that makes you feel like an actual adult instead of a guy pretending to have his life together. Bruno came into my life about 4 years ago when my sister's friend found him wandering the streets looking like he hadn't eaten in weeks. She couldn't keep him in her apartment, so I volunteered temporarily. Temporary turned into permanent the moment that dog curled up on my feet and fell asleep. He's been my shadow ever since, following me from room to room, like he's afraid I'll disappear if he looks away too long. Let me paint you a picture of how this whole disaster started. Megan and I met at a friend's wedding 3 years ago. She was a bridesmaid, I was one of the groomsmen, and we spent the entire reception talking in the corner while everyone else did the electric slide. She was a dental hygienist, had this infectious laugh, and seemed genuinely impressed that I owned furniture that didn't come from a college dorm room clearance sale. The wedding was for my college roommate Brad and his now wife Michelle. Big outdoor ceremony at this vineyard about 2 hours from the city. I'd known Brad since freshman year when we got paired as roommates and bonded over our shared hatred of 8 a.m. classes. Good dude. Terrible taste in music, but good dude. Megan was Michelle's coworker. They worked at the same dental practice downtown, and Michelle had asked her to be a bridesmaid because they'd gotten close over the years. I noticed her during the ceremony, mostly because she kept making faces at Michelle to try to make her laugh during the vows. Seemed like someone with a sense of humor. Reception rolled around and somehow we ended up at the same table. Started talking about random stuff. Favorite movies, worst first dates, whether pineapple belongs on pizza. She had this way of making everything feel easy, like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. By the time the DJ started playing Bruno Mars, I'd already asked for her number and she'd already given it. We started dating immediately after that wedding. Things moved fast, but it felt right, you know? First date was coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into walking around downtown until midnight, because neither of us wanted the night to end. Second date was a hiking trip with Bruno, and she didn't complain once about the mud or the bugs. Third date she came over and we made dinner together while Bruno watched hopefully from his spot in the corner. Within 6 months, she basically lived at my place, even though she kept her apartment for appearances because her parents were traditional. Whatever, I didn't mind. I liked having her around. Bruno liked her too, which in my book was the ultimate seal of approval. That dog has excellent judgment about people. Usually. Her apartment was this tiny studio near downtown where she worked. Barely room for a bed and a couch, no room for a dog, and definitely no room for 2 people to live comfortably. She started spending more and more nights at my place until the studio was basically just a storage unit she paid rent on. Made more sense for her to just be at my townhouse, where there was actual space to breathe. For almost 3 years, things were solid. We talked about getting married, having kids, the whole 9 yards. I even started looking at rings around our 2-year anniversary, though I never pulled the trigger because something always felt slightly off. Nothing I could pinpoint. Just this gut feeling that I kept ignoring because everything looked perfect on paper. Her parents loved me. Her dad Frank was this gruff contractor who'd built half the houses in their neighborhood, and he respected that I worked with my hands even if mine was more design than labor. Her mom, Patricia, treated me like a son, always making extra food when we visited, and asking about my job like she actually cared about drainage calculation. They kept dropping hints about wedding dates and grandkids, and Megan would laugh and say we were taking things slow. My parents felt the same way about Megan. My mom thought she was delightful, always commented on how polite and put together she was. My dad liked that she actually talked to him about sports instead of just nodding politely like previous girlfriends had done. My sister thought she was a little too perfect, but kept that opinion mostly to herself until later. Then came Damon. Damon was Megan's best friend from high school. They'd grown up on the same street, went to prom as friends, stayed in touch through college even though he moved to Atlanta for some finance job. According to Megan, they were like siblings, purely platonic. Nothing romantic had ever happened between them, and nothing ever would. I'd heard about Damon for years but never actually met him. He was just this abstract figure in her stories, someone she'd text occasionally or FaceTime during holidays. I had zero problems with it because why would I? Everyone's got old friends. I've got buddies from high school I still talk to, and if any of them moved back to town, I'd be excited too. The stories about Damon were always positive. How he helped her study for finals in high school. How he drove 2 hours to pick her up when her car broke down sophomore year of college. How he always remembered her birthday and sent funny cards. He sounded like a good guy, the kind of friend everyone wishes they had. Then Damon announced he was moving back to North Carolina. His company opened a branch in Charlotte, about 40 minutes from where we lived, and he'd been offered a senior position. Something about managing accounts for major clients. The kind of job that sounds impressive at dinner parties, but nobody really understands what it actually involves. Megan was ecstatic when she told me the news. Like bouncing off the walls excited, talking about how they could finally hang out again like the old days. She called me at work to tell me. Couldn't even wait until I got home. Her voice was all high-pitched and happy, going on about how she'd missed him so much and how great it would be to have her best friend nearby again. I smiled and said, "That's awesome, babe." Genuinely happy for her, because I had no reason not to be. I was happy for her. Genuinely. Having your childhood best friend move back to the area seemed like a good thing. Plus, I figured I'd finally get to meet this legendary Damon character and maybe gain a new buddy in the process. Always good to expand the friend group. The first time I met him was at some Italian restaurant Megan picked out. She'd been planning this dinner for weeks, wanting everything to be perfect for when her two favorite people finally met. I showed up in my nice jeans and a button-down, ready to make a good impression on the guy who'd been her friend longer than I'd known her. Damon rolled up 20 minutes late in a BMW that screamed mid-level finance bro trying too hard. He was about my height but thinner, wore clothes that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment, and had this way of looking at you like he was calculating your net worth and finding you lacking. His handshake was the kind where they squeeze too hard to prove something. He barely shook my hand before sliding into the booth next to Megan instead of across from her. First red flag, but I brushed it off. Old friends sit next to each other. No big deal. Dinner was weird. Every story Megan told somehow involved Damon. Every joke was an inside reference I didn't get. Every time I tried to contribute to the conversation, Damon would redirect it back to something from their shared past. I felt like a third wheel at my own girlfriend's dinner. I tried to be engaging. Asked about his job, his apartment search, his plans for the weekend. He gave me these short answers that didn't invite follow-up, then immediately turned back to Megan to tell another story about something that happened in high school. I sat there eating my pasta primavera and wondering if this was what the rest of my relationship was going to look like. But whatever. First meetings are awkward. I gave it time. Except time didn't make things better. It made them worse. Suddenly, Damon was everywhere. Megan wanted him to come to our game nights. Megan wanted him to join us for Sunday brunch. Megan wanted to go help him decorate his new apartment and spent an entire Saturday there while I was at work. She'd come home talking about his amazing view and his fancy kitchen and how he was such a natural decorator. The game nights were the worst. We'd have friends over for board games and food, something we'd been doing for years. And suddenly Damon was a permanent fixture. He'd show up late, make comments about how the games we played were too basic, and spend half the night on his phone while the rest of us actually participated. But Megan would light up whenever he arrived. Like the party didn't start until he walked through the door. My buddy Travis noticed it before I wanted to admit it to myself. Pulled me aside during one of those game nights while Megan and Damon were having some private conversation in my kitchen. "Dude," Travis said with this concerned look, "you seeing what I'm seeing?" I shrugged. "They're just catching up. Old friends." Travis gave me the look, the one that says I'm being an idiot, but he's too polite to say it directly. "Sure, man. Whatever you say." The real problem started about 2 months after Damon moved back. Megan came home one Thursday night and casually mentioned that she and Damon were planning a weekend trip to Asheville together, just the two of them, to check out some music festival. I looked up from the pasta I was making. Excuse me, what? She looked at me like I'd asked her to explain basic math. It's just a weekend trip, Cole. We used to do this kind of stuff all the time in high school. You're being weird about it. I wasn't being weird about it. I was being a normal person who found it strange that his girlfriend wanted to spend a weekend alone with another guy. But apparently, that made me insecure. I asked if I could come along. Suddenly, there weren't enough tickets. I asked if her friend Rachel wanted to go and make it a group thing. Megan said that would be awkward because Rachel didn't know Damon that well. Every solution I offered got shot down with some excuse that didn't quite make sense. The excuses were creative. I'll give her that. The hotel only had one room left. Damon's car only seats two comfortably for long trips. The festival was sold out except for the 2 tickets they'd already bought. It was like she'd anticipated every possible objection and preloaded a response. Fine. I decided to trust her. She went to Asheville, sent me a few pictures, came back Sunday night acting totally normal. I asked how it went, and she said it was fun, and that was pretty much the end of the discussion. The pictures were mostly of scenery, mountains, the music stage from a distance, one selfie of her and Damon at a coffee shop that I stared at way longer than I should have, trying to read something into the way they were standing. I told myself I was being paranoid. She'd never given me a reason not to trust her, but something had shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it, but she seemed different after that trip. More distant, more attached to her phone, more likely to step outside to take calls that were supposedly from work. The texts that used to be out in the open were now angled away from me, like she didn't want me seeing the screen. Small things started adding up. She stopped leaving her phone on the counter when she showered. She changed her password and claimed it was for security. She got defensive when I asked casual questions about her day. Every conversation felt like there was a subtext I wasn't supposed to notice. Then the sleeping arrangement conversation happened. Megan's parents were renewing their vows for their 30th anniversary. Big party, whole family coming in from out of state. They'd rented this lodge up in the mountains that could sleep like 30 people. Megan was obviously invited, and so was I, as her long-term boyfriend, who her parents actually liked. She'd been talking about this event for months. How meaningful it was that her parents were still together, after 30 years. How she hoped we'd do something similar someday. How important it was that I be there to meet all her extended family and show them we were serious. When we were going over the sleeping arrangements, Megan mentioned casually that she'd be sharing a room with Damon. I literally stopped mid-sentence. Come again? She explained it like I was a child. The lodge had limited rooms. Family members got priority. Since Damon was basically family and I was technically not a blood relative, it made more sense for her and Damon to share a room while I bunked with her cousin Brandon. Her tone was so matter-of-fact, like she was explaining why water is wet. Just basic logic that any reasonable person would understand and accept without question. The sky is blue, grass is green, and obviously your girlfriend should share a bed with another man at family events. I just stared at her. You want to share a bed with another man while I sleep in a different room. It's not a big deal, Cole. It's Damon. He's like my brother. We've shared beds plenty of times growing up. You're being really insecure about this. There it was. The magic word. Insecure. The word hung in the air between us like a challenge, like she'd played a trump card that was supposed to end the discussion. How dare you have feelings about this situation that make me uncomfortable? The real problem here is your emotions, not my actions. I took a breath, tried to be calm, tried to be rational. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with that arrangement. That, as her boyfriend of nearly 3 years, I thought it was reasonable to expect we'd share a room at a family event. That asking to not have your girlfriend sleep in the same bed as another man wasn't controlling or jealous. It was basic relationship boundary. I kept my voice steady. Didn't raise it, didn't accuse, just stated facts. This makes me uncomfortable. I would like us to share a room. This is a reasonable request from someone in a committed relationship. She exploded, accused me of not trusting her, said I was trying to isolate her from her friends, called me possessive and controlling, and said she was tired of walking on eggshells around my fragile masculinity. All because I didn't want her sharing a bed with Damon. The transformation was instant. 1 second she was my girlfriend explaining sleeping arrangements, the next she was a stranger screaming at me about what a terrible person I was. Every perceived slight from our entire relationship came pouring out like she'd been keeping a list. The time I asked who she was texting. The time I suggested maybe she spent too much time with Damon. The time I looked at her phone and she caught me. I let her rant for a good 5 minutes. Just stood there with my arms crossed while she unloaded every accusation she could think of. When she finally ran out of steam and stood there breathing heavily with tears in her eyes, I said the only thing that made sense in that moment. You're right. I am insecure. I'm so insecure that I don't want to be in a relationship where my girlfriend thinks sleeping with another man is normal. So let's fix that. She looked confused. Fix what? This. Us. I'm done. The words came out calm and clear. No anger, no emotion, just a decision I'd apparently already made somewhere in the back of my mind while she was screaming at me. The switch had flipped. I was no longer trying to salvage anything. I was just stating facts. She literally laughed. You're breaking up with me because I want to share a room with my best friend? I'm breaking up with you because you think I'm the problem for having a problem with that. You've been putting Damon first for months and I've been making excuses for it. But this is where I draw the line. What followed was about an hour of her cycling through every manipulation tactic in the book. She cried. She apologized. She said she'd tell her parents we needed our own room. She accused me of overreacting. She threatened to leave and never come back. She begged me to calm down and think about this rationally. The crying came first. Deep, heaving sobs about how she couldn't believe I was doing this. How I was throwing away everything we'd built over something so stupid. Then the apology. She didn't mean to call me insecure. She was just stressed about the party and it came out wrong. Then the bargaining. Okay, we can share a room. She'd talk to her parents. Damon could room with Brandon instead. Problem solved. Why was I still upset? She was fixing it. Then the anger again. Fine. If I wanted to be unreasonable, she'd leave. She didn't need this. She didn't need someone who couldn't handle her having friends. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then stopped and turned around like she was waiting for me to chase her. I didn't move. I stayed calm the whole time. Just kept packing her stuff into boxes while she spiraled. Her books from the shelf, her extra clothes from the closet, the toiletries from the bathroom. Bruno watched from his bed with his head tilted, probably confused about why I was touching stuff that smelled like her. Finally, she hit me with the classic, "You're going to regret this. You'll never find someone who loves you like I do. Maybe. But at least I won't find someone who gaslights me about basic boundaries either. Doors that way." She left. Bruno didn't even get up from his bed to say goodbye, which I took as validation of my life choices. Good boy knew what was up. The next few weeks were rough, not gonna lie. 3 years is a long time to be with someone. Even when you know the breakup was right, there's still an adjustment period. My buddy Travis came over most nights to help me eat pizza and watch action movies. We'd sit on the couch with Bruno between us and trash talk Megan while pretending we were totally fine. Travis had been through his own bad breakup a couple years back, so he knew exactly what I needed. No advice, no platitudes, just company and distraction. We rewatched the entire Fast and Furious franchise. We played video games until 2 a.m. We went to the gym together and lifted until my muscles screamed. Work helped too. Threw myself into projects that needed attention, stayed late reviewing plans, volunteered for site visits that nobody else wanted. My boss noticed the extra effort and started talking more seriously about that promotion. Silver linings. What I wasn't expecting was the message from a girl named Whitney. It came through Instagram about 3 weeks after the breakup. I didn't recognize the name at first, but when I clicked on her profile, I realized she looked vaguely familiar. Couldn't place where I'd seen her before. Brown hair, green eyes, picture of her with a golden retriever on a beach. Her message was simple. Hey, I know this is random, but I think we should talk. I used to date Damon and I have some information you might want to hear. Normally I'd ignore something like this. Sounded like drama I didn't need, but something made me respond. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that she was really pretty and I was newly single. Maybe it was the fact that she mentioned Damon specifically, and I wanted answers about what exactly had been going on. I typed back, "I'm listening." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next day. Neutral territory, public place. Just in case this was some weird setup or she turned out to be crazy. Travis thought I was nuts for going. What if she's working with them? What if it's a trap? I told him he watched too many movies. Whitney showed up looking nervous but determined. She was about my age, wore jeans and a casual sweater, and had these green eyes that made it hard to focus on what she was saying at first. She ordered a black coffee, sat down across from me, and started talking. Turns out Whitney and Damon had dated for 2 years while he was in Atlanta. She'd moved there to be with him, gave up her apartment and her job in Raleigh, basically built her whole life around this guy. They'd talked about getting married. She thought they were solid. She'd been a veterinary technician in Raleigh, working at a clinic she loved with coworkers who felt like family. When Damon suggested she move to Atlanta to be with him, she'd been hesitant at first, but he'd been so convincing. Said they couldn't build a future if they were always living in different cities. Said he wanted to come home to her every night. Said he was ready to be serious. So she moved, found a new job, made new friends, started planning a future that revolved around being Damon's partner. Then Megan came to visit. According to Whitney, she noticed something off immediately when Megan arrived for a long weekend visit. The way Damon looked at her. The inside jokes. The casual touches that seemed too familiar. Whitney brushed it off at first because Damon swore they were just friends. Childhood best friends. Practically siblings. Sound familiar? The visit was supposed to be 3 days. Megan had flown in for some kind of conference and was staying at Damon's apartment because hotels were expensive and they were such good friends. Whitney had offered to take time off work to show Megan around the city. Damon said that wasn't necessary, that he had it covered. Whitney watched them together that weekend. The way Megan would touch Damon's arm when she talked. The way they'd finish each other's sentences. The way they'd have entire conversations with just looks, leaving Whitney out completely. She told herself it was normal for old friends. She told herself she was being paranoid. About a month after that visit, Whitney found texts on Damon's phone. Nothing explicit, but definitely not the kind of text you send your platonic friend. Pet names. Flirty comments about missing each other. Plans for when they could finally be together without anyone getting in the way. When she confronted Damon, he turned it around on her, called her crazy, said she was reading into things, accused her of being jealous and insecure, and unable to handle him having female friends. The gaslighting was textbook, Whitney said, stirring her coffee. Made me think I was the problem, that I was paranoid and possessive, that I was sabotaging our relationship with my trust issues. She believed him, apologized for going through his phone, tried to be more understanding, tried to be the cool girlfriend who didn't freak out about her boyfriend's female friends. 6 months later, Damon announced he was moving back to North Carolina, said it was for work, said it had nothing to do with Megan. Whitney offered to move with him. He said no, said they needed space, said long distance would be good for them. Whitney's voice got quiet when she talked about that part. How she'd begged him to let her come, how she'd offered to find a new job, make new friends again, start over in a new city, how he'd gotten irritated and said she was being clingy and he needed room to breathe. They broke up a week later, and she never heard from him again, until she saw on Instagram that he'd moved to Charlotte, right near where Megan lived. What a coincidence. I sat there processing all of this while my coffee went cold. Whitney was watching me with this mixture of sympathy and vindication, like she'd been waiting months to tell someone this story, and finally found someone who'd believe her. So you think they were together the whole time? I asked. Whitney shook her head. I don't think they were physical while we were dating. But emotionally? Absolutely. Megan was always his real priority. I was just keeping the seat warm until he could get back to her. That hit different, because that's exactly what I'd been to Megan. A seat warmer. A placeholder boyfriend who served a purpose until Damon could step back into the picture. 3 years of my life building toward a future that she was never actually planning to share with me. Whitney and I talked for 3 hours that day, compared timelines, matched up stories, realized that Damon and Megan had been playing a long game that neither of us saw coming. By the time we left that coffee shop, I had a pretty clear picture of what had really been going on. The timelines synced up perfectly. When Megan started acting distant, that matched when Damon started pulling away from Whitney. When Damon announced his move to Charlotte, Megan had suddenly become very interested in our future and whether I was serious about us, like she was locking me in just in case her other option fell through. But here's the thing about Whitney. She wasn't just a source of information. She was actually really cool. She was smart and funny and had this dry sense of humor that matched mine perfectly. She'd been through something similar and understood exactly why I was hurt without me having to explain it. She didn't tell me I was overreacting or being too sensitive. She just nodded and said, "Yeah, that tracks." She had a rescue dog named Biscuit, who apparently got along great with Bruno, which she mentioned casually, like it wasn't a big deal. She showed me pictures on her phone, golden retriever mix, big dopey smile, tongue hanging out of his mouth in every shot. We exchanged numbers for future information sharing. That turned into texting about random stuff, memes about dogs, complaints about work, random thoughts at midnight that didn't need a response but felt good to share with someone who got it. That turned into meeting for coffee again. Then dinner at a taco place she liked. Then a hiking trip with both dogs where Biscuit and Bruno spent the entire time chasing each other around like idiots while we walked behind them laughing. About 2 months after that first coffee meeting, Whitney and I made it official. Nothing dramatic, no big announcement, just a natural progression from 2 people bonding over shared trauma to 2 people actually liking each other as humans. She came over for dinner one night, and we were watching some movie neither of us was really paying attention to, and I just asked her, "Are we doing this? Like, officially?" She smiled and said, "I thought we already were." And that was that. My friends thought it was hilarious. Travis nearly choked on his pizza when I told him, "You're dating your ex's boyfriend's ex? That's like some telenovela garbage, dude." I love it. Whitney's friends had a similar reaction. Apparently, there was a group chat dedicated entirely to updates on the situation, which I found both flattering and slightly terrifying. Whitney showed me some of the messages, and they were rooting for us like we were characters in a show they were watching. Word got back to Megan fast. Within a week of us posting a picture together, my phone started blowing up. First came the text from mutual friends fishing for information. "Hey man, heard you're seeing someone new. What's the story?" Then came the passive-aggressive Instagram story post from Megan about how some people will believe anything and how fake people always find each other. Then came the direct contact. Her first text was almost polite. "Hey, I heard you're seeing Whitney. Just wanted to let you know she's a compulsive liar and you shouldn't believe anything she says about me or Damon." I showed Whitney the message. She laughed so hard she snorted. "Yeah, I'm the liar. That's rich coming from the girl who told her boyfriend she and Damon were like siblings while probably planning their wedding." I didn't respond to Megan, just kept living my life. That made her escalate. Then came the late night calls. I'd wake up to missed calls at 2 a.m. No voicemails, just Megan's name lighting up my phone screen. I blocked her number. She called from Damon's phone. I blocked that too. She made a new Instagram account just to message me. Finally, I broke my silence with one simple response. "I've got nothing to say to you. Stop contacting me." Whitney got a message from Damon about a week later. First time he'd reached out since their breakup over a year ago. The message was dripping with fake concern. "Hey, just wanted to check in and make sure you're okay. I heard you're seeing Megan's ex and I'm a little worried about you. Cole can be really manipulative and I'd hate to see you get hurt. If you ever need to talk, I'm here for you." Whitney screenshotted it and sent it to me with the caption, "The audacity of this man." We laughed about it, but underneath the humor, there was something satisfying about seeing them squirm. They'd spent so long manipulating both of us, playing these games behind our backs, and now the two people they'd hurt had found each other and were actually happy. From what I heard through the grapevine, Megan and Damon's relationship wasn't going great. Turns out when you build a relationship on lies and manipulation, it's hard to trust each other. Megan was constantly worried Damon was doing to her what he did to Whitney. Damon was frustrated that Megan kept tabs on his every move. They fought constantly, broke up, and got back together multiple times, and generally made each other miserable. Mutual friends would mention it casually. "Heard Megan and Damon are fighting again?" Apparently, she found some texts he didn't want her to see. "He says she's being paranoid." Sound familiar? Meanwhile, Whitney and I were doing great. Bruno and Biscuit became best friends, which meant most weekends involved hiking trips or beach days with two extremely happy dogs. Whitney started teaching me about animals since she worked at the vet clinic, and I'd come home with random facts about dog nutrition or how to tell if your pet is anxious. Turned out my approach to feeding Bruno was all wrong, and she helped me switch him to a better diet that had him acting like a puppy again. Her parents loved me. Drove up to meet them about 3 months in, nervous as anything, and her dad immediately wanted to show me his workshop and talk about tools for 2 hours. Her mom made enough food to feed an army and kept asking about my job like she actually cared about drainage systems. Good people. The kind who raised their daughter right, and it showed. My parents loved her. My mom kept calling her a breath of fresh air after Megan. My dad said she seemed like someone with a good head on her shoulders. My sister, who'd never really liked Megan but kept it quiet, pulled me aside and said, "This one's a keeper." Everything just clicked in a way that my relationship with Megan never had. Then came the confrontation. Whitney and I were at this local farmer's market on a Saturday morning, grabbing vegetables and walking around with our dogs, when I spotted them across the crowd. Megan and Damon, walking toward us like it was some kind of ambush. I felt Whitney tense up beside me. I put my hand on her back. "It's fine. We've got nothing to hide." They approached us with this weird energy, like they couldn't decide if they wanted to fight or pretend everything was normal. Megan had lost weight and looked tired, dark circles under her eyes that makeup wasn't quite covering. Damon looked exactly the same, still with that smug expression that made me want to punch him. "Cole, Whitney." Megan's voice was tight. "What a coincidence." Whitney smiled sweetly. "Is it though? You've been stalking Cole's location on Snapchat for months. I figured you'd show up eventually." Megan's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." Whitney turned to Damon. "Hey Damon, still gaslighting women about your emotional affairs? Or did you finally admit the truth?" Damon's jaw tightened. "You need to move on, Whitney. This obsession isn't healthy." I actually laughed out loud at that. Obsession? She literally hadn't thought about you in months until you slid into her DMs pretending to be concerned. That was rich, by the way. Really convincing. Damon stepped forward like he wanted to get in my face. "You stole my girlfriend." "I didn't steal anyone. Whitney made her own choice, just like Megan made hers." Funny how that works when people actually get to make informed decisions instead of being lied to. Megan grabbed Damon's arm. "Let's just go. This isn't worth it." But Damon wasn't done. He had this need to have the last word, like every insecure man who'd spent his whole life pretending to be more than he was. You two deserve each other, he said with a sneer. A paranoid liar and a controlling jerk. Perfect match. Whitney stepped forward before I could respond. Actually, we do deserve each other. We deserve people who don't manipulate and gaslight and treat their partners like placeholders. So thanks, I guess. If you two hadn't been so awful, we never would have found each other. She grabbed my hand and we walked away, leaving them standing there in the middle of the farmer's market, looking like they'd just been slapped. Bruno and Biscuit trotted alongside us like nothing had happened, more interested in the smell of fresh bread from a nearby stall. We didn't talk about it much on the drive home, just put on some music and let the dogs hang their heads out the windows while the scenery rolled by. When we got back to my place, Whitney went straight to the kitchen and started making lunch like it was any other Saturday. You okay? I asked from the doorway. She shrugged. Yeah, actually, I thought that would feel worse, seeing him again. But honestly, he just looked kind of pathetic, like he's already running out of people to manipulate. I walked over and kissed her forehead. That's because you've got better things to focus on now. She smiled. Yeah, like figuring out whose turn it is to do dishes. Travis called me that night after hearing about the confrontation through the grapevine. Apparently someone at the farmer's market knew someone who knew someone, and the whole thing had spread through our social circle like wildfire. Dude, Travis said, barely containing his laughter. I heard Whitney absolutely destroyed them, like verbally demolished. Is that true? Pretty much. She handled it better than I would have. Man, you really found a good one, didn't you? Yeah, I did. That was about 4 months ago. Whitney and I moved in together last month, found a place with a big backyard for the dogs, and enough space for both of us to have our own areas. She turned the spare bedroom into a craft room for her jewelry-making hobby. I set up a home office where I can work remotely on days when I don't need to be at job sites. We talk about the future sometimes. Marriage, kids, the whole thing. The moving process was actually pretty smooth. We found this 3-bedroom ranch on the edge of town with a fenced yard that made both dogs lose their minds with excitement. First day we moved in, Bruno and Biscuit spent 3 hours doing laps around the property like they'd won the lottery. Whitney and I sat on the back porch with boxes still piled up in the kitchen, watching them run and laughing about how absurd our situation was. Her parents drove down to help us move. Her dad spent the whole weekend making sure everything was level and properly installed while her mom organized our kitchen cabinets better than we ever could have done ourselves. My parents came the following weekend with a housewarming gift and my mom's famous lasagna. Everyone got along. Everyone was happy. It felt like the start of something real. About 2 months ago, Megan and Damon finally broke up for good. Apparently, Megan caught him texting another girl, some old friend from college who he swore was just a friend. She finally experienced what Whitney and I had been trying to tell her all along. She tried reaching out to me one more time after the breakup, a long message about how she finally understood what she'd lost. I read it, typed out, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not interested. I've moved on. Take care. Blocked her number and went back to cooking dinner with Whitney. Last week, Travis forwarded me a screenshot from Megan's Facebook. She'd moved back in with her parents, posted some vague status about starting over and finding herself. The comments were full of supportive messages from people who had no idea what she'd actually done. Travis sent a follow-up text. Karma really did its job on this one, huh? Yeah, it did. Whitney came up behind me while I was reading the messages and wrapped her arms around my waist. What are you looking at? I showed her the screenshot. She read it, shrugged, and went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. Huh. Anyway, Biscuit needs his walk after we eat. Your turn tonight. Bruno and Biscuit are currently passed out on the couch after a long morning at the dog park. Whitney's humming some song I don't recognize while she sets the table. Someone told me this would make a good Reddit post, so here we are. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.